I'm David Brancaccio, Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.
The Florida Star newspaper, serving communities for over 70 years, is dedicated to being your source for delivering thoughtful, factual news. The Florida Star is available at over 200 outlets in Florida and Georgia, or at floridastar.com. The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schindler, and this is First Coast Connect. It's Friday, which means it's time for our First Coast Week in Review. We'll be talking about the biggest stories of the week. The governor tries to stop a newspaper's investigation into the Hope Florida charity. Downtown development in Jacksonville includes a land swap and a new leader at the Downtown Investment Authority. City council members vote to block financial aid to undocumented individuals, and accidents and close calls put e-bikes on state and local lawmakers' agendas. We'll talk about all that and more with our panel of journalists on our Friday Week in Review. Later, St. Augustine Theater digs into a surreal exploration of political tyranny in the play Rhinoceros. Join the conversation. Give us a call at 904-549-2937 or email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. It's all ahead this hour after the day's news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Israel continues to attack sites in Iran today. These attacks target Iranian nuclear enrichment facilities and military sites. Israel says it has also killed 3 top Iranian military leaders. NPR's Hadil Al-Shalchi reports Israel says its spy agency helped plan the attacks.
Israel's spy agency, known as the Mossad, smuggled weapons into Iran ahead of its attack on the country, according to Israeli security officials. In a briefing to reporters, the officials said a base for launching explosive drones was established inside Iran and that the drones were activated to target missile launchers at another base near Tehran. Israel had smuggled precision weapons into central Iran and positioned them near surface-to-air missile systems and had deployed strike systems on vehicles. Both were activated as the attack began in order to target Iran's defenses. Hadil Al-Shalchi, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
President Trump is writing online about Israel's attacks. This morning, he said that he had given Iran a 60-day ultimatum to make a deal on its nuclear program. He says that today is day 61. The United States has been holding a series of talks with Iran on its program. Representatives from both sides were supposed to meet this weekend in Oman, but Iranian state media say those talks are off. Democrats are calling the forcible removal and detainment of U.S. Senator Alex Padilla an assault by the Trump administration. NPR's Claudia Grisales reports that the Senate's Republican leader is investigating yesterday's incident.
Colleagues of California Democratic Senator Alex Padilla are demanding answers after he was forced to the ground during a press conference for Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. Senate Majority Leader John Thune, a Republican like Noem of South Dakota, told reporters he's not jumping to any conclusions before announcing his next steps.
But we want to get the full scope of what happened and do what we would do on any incident like this involving a senator, and that's try to gather all the relevant information.
However, Thune's Republican counterpart at the other side of the Capitol is not waiting. House Speaker Mike Johnson said Padilla acted wildly inappropriate and should be censured. Claudia Grisales, NPR News.
The House of Representatives has voted to strip the Corporation for Public Broadcasting of all federal funding for the next 2 years. The legislation passed in the House by 2 votes. NPR's David Folkenflik reports Republican sponsors acted on a request by President Trump to claw back the funding.
What we're looking at is $1.1 billion, small change in the grand scheme of things, but that was to fund public broadcasting, all of it, mostly local public television and radio stations for the next 2 years.
NPR's David Folkenflik reporting. The measure now goes to the Senate. This is NPR.
You're listening to WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Good morning. I'm Stephen Ponson. It's now 9:04. A local lighthouse preservation group is getting an $85,000 grant to determine the feasibility of relocating the 166-year-old St. Johns River Lighthouse. The historic lighthouse is currently in a fenced-in area on Naval Station Mayport property. Mayport Lighthouse Association Vice President Elizabeth Boggs says the goal is to make it more accessible to the public by moving it a half mile to nearby Mayport Village.
One of the benefits of relocating the lighthouse is that we believe it'll contribute to increased economic and cultural activity in Mayport Village and help with the revitalization of the village.
Also involved in the project is the nonprofit Mayport Waterfront Partnership, which plans to redevelop 7 acres of riverfront to put the lighthouse near the St. Johns River ferry crossing. Once in its new spot, Boggs says they'll continue their fundraising efforts to restore the 81-foot-tall lighthouse so that people can climb to the top and enjoy the view from the river. Drivers wishing for the return of the St. Johns River ferry can rejoice. Ferry service was halted back on May 4th after it hit the boarding ramp while leaving Mayport Landing. The ferry was okay, but the ramp required repairs. The Jacksonville Transportation Authority says those repairs were completed 2 weeks ahead of schedule, allowing ferry service to resume today. Storms in the forecast later on this afternoon for northeast Florida. Highs will reach the upper 80s to lower 90s. Those showers should end a couple of hours after sunset, lows in the 70s.
Support for NPR comes from the Lemelson Foundation, dedicated to improving lives through invention, innovation, and climate action. And the William T. Grant Foundation, supporting research to improve the lives of young people at WTGrantsFDN.org.
Welcome.
Well, it's good to be here and a longtime reporter, and it's great being retired.
It is good being retired. Well, it's always good to have you here, regardless. Mike Mendenhall, City Hall reporter and associate editor of Jacksonville Today. Hey, Mike.
Good morning, Ann. Good to be here.
Good to have you. Randy DeFoor, attorney and former Jacksonville City Council member. Good morning, Randy.
Good morning, Ann.
And Riley Phillips, investigative reporter at First Coast News. Hi, Riley.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. So a lengthy council meeting, Mike, this week, almost 6 hours, eventually voted to approve a bill prohibiting city spending on residents who don't have legal documentation. You were there. This meeting got quite tense.
Yeah, it did. And, there were quite a few floor amendments that were offered to by city council members, which required at one point the city attorney to say, hey, we need to stop this meeting so I can actually write some of these amendments out. So they were changing the bill on the fly as things were going. There's a lot of debate. And there were protests outside of City Hall. And
Before and after.
And some of those protesters, they kept going throughout the entire meeting. I mean, it was definitely a tense moment. And the bill sponsor, Rory Diamond, was very resolute in trying to push this bill through. But it wasn't unanimous. It was I believe 11 to 7, I believe, was the vote. So and there was bipartisan opposition as well. So this was not well liked by everybody.
Yeah, and you say the protesters, throughout. The meeting ended to a chorus of audience members shouting, "Shame, shame." Let's just hear a little bit of the debate. Let's hear from a few of those council members.
This is ridiculous. It's a waste of our time. It's a waste of our efforts. It's a waste. Let me tell you again, stop trying to vilify unauthorized aliens. They don't do what you say they are doing.
What he is saying is completely not rooted in any type of reality. In fact, this bill weaponizes fear under the guise of immigration reform.
Both of these arguments are incredibly dishonest and flawed. First of all, this is about taxpayer money. Jacksonville taxpayer money. There's only so many places that we spend Jacksonville taxpayer money. And we are saying in this bill that we're not going to spend Jacksonville taxpayer money on some of these services. That's what we're saying.
So we just heard there from, in order, council members Tyrona Clark Murray, Rockman Johnson, and then that last voice, Rory Diamond, the bill's sponsor. In the end, Randy, they did carve out some exceptions, specifically for people who are receiving services that are pregnant women. The Kids Hope Alliance, because people were saying, there's a lot of people getting services that might be kind of innocent victims in this.
Yeah, I noticed that. I did notice too that, but they did not carve out Wolfson Children's Hospital, the largest provider of medical services for children. They did for UF, but not for Wolfson. So, I am taken back a little bit about all this. One being the fact that this is already covered by both the state and federal law, and secondly, Rory Diamond actually, his parents are immigrants. They came over with his siblings in the 70s from South Africa. And he was born, at the time he was born in the United States, his parents were not yet citizens. So I don't know if that makes him, what do they call that, an anchor baby? I don't know. But in any event, it's surprising to me that someone who is first generation citizen of the United States would bring this bill.
Mm. Jim, in your time covering City Hall for many years, I mean, there's obviously been a lot of tense issues, but this is the second time we've had kind of an immigration-related bill in a short period of time, and it's coming at a very tense time nationally. I mean, we just, demonstrations all over. They're probably going to be much bigger tomorrow for both the parade that's in D.C. and then the No Kings protests that have been planned. And so the issue of immigration enforcement, and these deportations is really top of mind and very heated for a lot of people.
It's very top of mind, but this whole thing, what's happening, I feel right now, it's all politics. It's all politics that are playing out. They're saying, yes, this is immigration. We can't spend money on this. And I'm just going, you're going to be spending this money anyway. It's
Explain
going
that.
to be,
Why would they be spending it anyway?
they're going to be those agencies that they're targeting do other work as well that people need. And I know that when they get down to this and they get down to those grants that they're going to be handing out, that money is going to go there. So and I just don't know how they're going to enforce this. I'd like to know where this stands right now. What's the mayor going to do? Is she going to sign this bill, or is it all going to come back again that they're going to need even more votes on this? But it's, as you've mentioned, it's coming at a time when we're watching what's going on in California. We have the No Kings protests that are going to happen this weekend in Jacksonville at several locations that are going to be, I'd be very concerned covering those events right now, what we're going to see happening. Yes, for the most part, things have been very peaceful here in Jacksonville, but things can change. We've seen things happen over the years with the Black Lives Matter protests that we saw some problems. So I think there are a lot of things that are going to be happening in Jacksonville as well as throughout the state of Florida. We heard the governor say, don't you block any roads here. There's going to be problems. We've heard other sheriffs say there are going to be problems. We haven't heard from TK Waters, I don't think, about this weekend. So there's a lot to keep an eye on.
I do just kind of want to draw attention to that because there was reporting about this statement that the governor made about what happens if, a crowd surrounds your vehicle. And, he's referencing a law that passed, this anti-riot law that passed a couple of years ago. But let's just hear what he had to say. This was in an interview Wednesday with the Rubin Report.
If you're driving on one of those streets and a mob comes and surrounds your vehicle and threatens you, you have a right to flee for your safety. And so if you drive off and you hit one of these people, that's their fault for impinging on you.
So, Riley, I do want to kind of, keep on the city. I mean, there's the question of what happens this weekend. There's a question of people concerned about protests. But this is also a question that could come back to the council. I mean, what do we know? This is an issue that you were covering. Is the mayor discussing a possible veto? We know that the last immigration bill that came up, she kind of, kind of split the baby, right? She kind of spoke out against it forcefully, but also elected not to sign, but also not to veto.
Yep. A spokesperson for her office says she's weighing her options. She has concerns with the ordinance, she's looking into it. So I'm sure we'll hear this upcoming week what she's going to do. I know Rory Diamond has already posted on social media that she has now 12 days to either sign it or veto it. So I guess the countdown is on for her. I'm not sure, honestly, which way she's going to go because, I mean, she has this veto. She didn't veto the last one, and I don't know if she wants to take a stand now, if this is going to be a trend of these local immigration bills, if she wants to kind of take a even greater stand to maybe stop these ordinances from coming up in the future.
Yeah, Mike, I mean, last time she said she just didn't want to kind of be the center of attention, the mayor that was vetoing this legislation that was going to crack down on immigration in the city of Jacksonville. That was kind of more of a legal, that bill was kind of more about the law. This is perhaps more about policy.
Yeah, I think that's the big difference. Is that was about law enforcement, and this is more about policy, which is really something that the mayor's administration has some direct, some direct, control over. And one of the things that the mayor's office was telling city council during this whole process was like, look, we don't know how much this is going to cost. We don't have a mechanism to require these nonprofits and other organizations that get city grant funding to track where it's going, or as far as the documentation status of the individuals who are getting the money. There's no process in place, so they don't know how much it's going to cost. They don't know how long it's going to take to actually get those processes in place. So, and another thing too is, and I'm going to have Randy correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe a veto-proof majority on the city council is 13 votes, isn't it?
That's correct.
So if you look at the current vote, if everything stands, they don't have the votes to override a veto, and I'm sure that would be on the mayor's mind, when she's taking a look.
There was
at this.
one absentee person, I think,
yep.
Jacoby Pittman, but that wouldn't be enough to.
No, that still wouldn't be enough to override if she supported it. But I don't know where she stands on that bill.
But I think you could say that Jacoby probably would not support that, just from back. I just think the whole thing is going to be very interesting how this all plays out. It's going to say a lot for Jacksonville's future. It's just, like I said, all of this is politics.
I mean, it creates a lot of paperwork, does it not, also for the mayor's office, Randy?
Yeah.
I mean, because it requires her to present some documentation within, I think, a month or so to basically say, like, how much, what is the population of undocumented immigrants in this city? What portion of them are receiving city benefits, and to account for all of that.
And I don't think she can. I mean, they would have to go back and identify people who are illegal immigrants, which I don't think there's a database as we speak on that issue.
Who are illegal immigrants, but who are also recipients of benefits from agencies that are outside the city.
So they would have to go out to the agencies to get that information.
And the city, those agencies most likely are not collecting that information.
No, I'm sure they're not.
And so if this bill calls for something that the mayor can't deliver, what does that mean? I mean, what does that mean for the mayor?
Well, I mean, I think her argument could be this is unenforceable. That we, as Mike said, first of all, we don't have the procedures in place today because it relies on third parties to get the information. And then how do you enforce that? I mean, then you're going to have to hire somebody to, like a code enforcement person to go in and see, whether people are complying or not.
Yeah.
I mean,
we have a similar comment from Tiffany on Facebook. She says, in my opinion, this law presents significant implementation challenges, including how service providers will verify immigration status and what liability the city may face for improper denial of services. These uncertainties create financial risks that are difficult to quantify. The broader economic impact could be manifested through workforce disruptions, reduced tax revenues, and destabilization of certain industry sectors. We also have a comment from Donna on Facebook saying, thank you, Randy DeFoor, pointing out the hypocrisy of Rory Diamond. So this is, there's a timeline on this, Mike, as Riley said. And so I guess we'll know in a couple of weeks what the outcome is.
Yeah, I mean, if she doesn't veto the bill, or she doesn't sign the bill and just lets it sit, then it does go into effect. So I mean,
is there any legal challenge to this kind of? I mean, is there any other alternative for a mayor in a situation like this?
I'm not aware of any. Maybe Jim, do you know?
I am not sure of any the legal challenge, but I know people can come up and start this process all over again to try to defeat it in other ways, other bills to come from this. But like I said, this is going to define what's going to be happening in this city, particularly with budget coming up. The budget talks have been underway with the mayor's office, but it's going to be presented to the city council in July, and all of this is going to have to come out and play. As Randy mentioned, there's different things like Wolfson Hospital. What will happen there? I'm wondering funding for any of the hospitals, all the emergency funding that they give to UF. Will that fall into play in this if undocumented workers are receiving treatment?
Yeah, I think UF was actually one of the exemptions in the bill. They completely exempted UF, and they also exempted the Kids Hope Alliance as well. And that's the other thing, as they were exempting more and more agencies. One of the comments that was made at City Council is we could keep finding different exemptions, like they're exempting people that are victims of human trafficking who are here not by their own will, and victims of domestic violence and active duty military. So there's that's something too that city council members could come back and just with new pieces of legislation to continue to carve out exemptions, and to the point where this bill just ends up getting watered down. I mean, that's one of the things that Raul Arias, who actually did vote for the bill, he was the one that wanted to completely exempt the Kids Hope Alliance,
Right.
and he made the comment. He's like we could come back and continue to amend the code as we find different people or organizations that need to be exempt. So I don't think that this is not the last word in this particular move.
Yeah. Well, if you're just joining us, we're talking to Jim Piggott, Randy DeFoor, Riley Phillips, and Mike Mendenhall about the week's headlines. And you are welcome to join our conversation. You can give us a call at 904-549-2937. You can email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. A little bit later in the program, we're going to be talking to 3 performers in a surrealist play from St. Augustine called The Rhinoceros, so stick around for that. I do want to move on now, though, to the topic of Hope, Florida. That is something that has been generating additional headlines this week, kind of not so much in the same vein as the investigation. This, of course, is the charity that was initiated by the governor's wife, Casey DeSantis. There has been some reporting on, questions about the actions of that charity, but this week discussion more about the governor's reaction to those reporting on this, particularly the Orlando Sentinel. So this was a cease and desist letter, Randy, that went out from the DeSantis administration, basically from the Department of Children and Families to the Orlando Sentinel, saying basically, stop what you're doing. Your reporter is acting out of line. Your reporter, they alleged he was intimidating foster families who'd received benefits from Hope, Florida, and indicating that he needed to cease and desist.
Well, I mean, this is, squarely in the First Amendment category. And it's interesting when, truth is a complete, absolute defense, right, to anything that you write. And
to a libel claim
to
or
a libel
defamation.
claim.
Yeah.
Right. And I thought it was interesting when that AEI weighed in on this one, because, as you know, American Enterprise Institute is probably one of the most conservative think tanks in the country, and they're saying that this is baloney. That the cease and desist letter is just complete baloney.
It was a curious letter. I mean, Jim, you've probably seen some letters like this in your lifetime, but this was a little different. This was unsigned. It was posted to social media, and it didn't really meet the legal criteria of a letter ordering a cease and desist, which would basically be addressed to a specific attorney, indicating an actable request, something that would satisfy your claim, or asking for a retraction or asking for some kind of specific. It just basically accused this reporter of acting inappropriately during his information gathering.
And that's what amazed me, is like I said, he was threatening the people, or this reporter was like making threats to some of the people to come forward and speak bad about this situation, and in turn about the governor's wife, Casey DeSantis. I think all of those reporters here I've known we've had drawback. People said, don't report on this, don't do that, you're wrong, and it's not. But not that you've gone after the wrong people, talking to Well, I guess, talking to the wrong people, that people don't make sense. I was looking back. I recall when there were threats from DeSantis' office about running commercials, pro-abortion commercials, that they threatened lawsuits that came out from DeSantis' office at the time.
Just last year.
Yeah, yeah, and that was kind of in the same realm. Nobody was saying what, and they threatened the TV stations that aired those, to do that. And then a judge threw all of that out. And the judge said, no, you can't do that. That's what came to mind for me. But I was more taken aback of what they were saying about what this reporter was doing to get that story. And that story, it has yet to be published, correct?
That's right. It has not come out yet. And we should say that, the Orlando Sentinel denies that their reporter was doing anything untoward. They said that this story will come out, that he's continuing to report it. But it has not yet been published. But they said that they're not going to observe a cease and desist. And in fact, a First Amendment lawyer that was interviewed I think from the Tallahassee Democrat said that because they didn't specify any law that was broken, they didn't specify any cause of action, because it's unsigned and it's not directed at an attorney, that she said basically this letter reads more like "shut up,"
Right.
Which is.
I would just add to that it didn't come from the individuals who who they're claiming were being harassed, right? So I mean, who is this an unsigned person that's claiming they represent an individual? I mean, it's more like they're just trying to get them to. Obviously, there's something to this. I mean, I'm like, I can't wait to read this article.
This did, though, lead to some blowback for the reporter. I mean, the governor immediately reposted this on social media, called the reporter a bottom feeder, tagged him by name in the post, which then kind of, spawned a whole range of comments about, first of all, the media, which is not unexpected, but also a lot of anti-Semitic comments about the reporter. And so it was, kind of an ugly little episode, I think. The reporter's saying that he's going to continue, though, with this, Riley.
Yes, and I love this tweet. He responded to DeSantis's tweet saying, "Why not respond to my numerous public records requests?" That was kind of his response, which I think is perfect because, in my opinion, if you've done nothing wrong, then why not let us uncover everything? And if you did nothing wrong, then we'll show that you did nothing wrong. So I like that little.
Yeah, I mean,
comeback.
in fact, the Orlando Sentinel said they are waiting on records requests that date back well into last year. But one thing that they did uncover, that this reporter did uncover, Mike, which was interesting, was that after this charity, Hope Florida, had filed its Form 990s, its tax forms, regarding a fundraiser, the Governor's Cup, which the governor had said was a huge success and had raised all this money, he actually found that the charity lost $17,000 on this big fundraiser, and his reporting then prompting the Hope Charity to say that they're going to refile an amended claim now. But obviously, his reporting is helping to suss out some inconsistencies.
No, for sure. I mean, and I think that's important. And another thing too that I think shouldn't get lost in this whole conversation is foster families, it's very difficult to be a foster family. It's also the foster children. They tend to come from very troubled backgrounds on a lot of situations, and it takes a lot of courage for a foster family to actually speak to a reporter, and it takes an immense amount of sensitivity as a reporter to have those conversations. And so I just think that it shouldn't be lost, like in this conversation, or in the conversation, just those families, those foster families that that are kind of going out on a limb to talk to this reporter. It takes a level of bravery, and I think that's something that I don't think should be lost.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the accusation is that he was talking to foster families who'd received money from Hope Florida in the wake of disasters. And we should say, Hope Florida is designed to basically steer people away from traditional welfare into nonprofits or perhaps faith groups to provide that aid so that it saves the state money. And that's kind of the conceit of the group. But Randy, I just want to ask, because Jim raised it, this does sort of echo this prior cease and desist that went out from the governor's office,
Right.
that told TV stations around the state to stop running ads that were, in favor of the abortion rights amendment, which was very unusual. And by and large, a couple of TV stations, I think, did stop running the ads. And the others said, we're not going to we're not going to listen to that because that is also a First Amendment's right infringement.
Right. And I just would add that, this is being investigated by the state attorney's office, Jack Campbell, in Tallahassee. Jack Campbell.
Hope Florida is.
Yeah, Hope Florida is. And he is well known to be incredibly ethical and honest. So I think there's more to come on this.
I want to take a call from Kendra in Mandarin. Good morning, Kendra. Go ahead.
Good morning. Well, it's no surprise that DeSantis's followers have made anti-Semitic comments toward this reporter because Governor DeSantis himself is an anti-Semite. Two brief examples of this that occurred right here in Jacksonville were when he was speaking, I believe that was at Bishop Kenny about 3 to 6 months ago, about abortion. He was presenting with his wife, and within about 2 minutes of opening the dialogue, he said that the abortion industry benefits certain people like George Soros. This is a traditional trope, anti-Semitic trope that is worn out and tiresome. Another example in Jacksonville was when there was a major football game about 2 years ago, and people were shining anti-Semitic slogans and logos onto buildings surrounding that football game, and it took them about over 24 hours to even give a response toward that. So he may be quick on the draw when it comes to things he doesn't like, but he also ignores things that he doesn't care about, like anti-Semitism. Thanks.
Thanks, Kendra. I mean, I think in the governor's defense, I think he would say he's a very strong ally of the Jewish community. He's been, very active in terms of his defense of Israel, and has visited there. I mean, I think that he certainly would disagree with that characterization. But I appreciate your comments, Kendra. Anyone have thoughts that they want to chime in on, or I'm going to move on if not. All right. I do want to talk about downtown because there's a lot happening downtown right now, a lot of activity, particularly with a new leader for the Downtown Investment Authority. Now, this is kind of a, for some people might be a little bit of a sleepy downtown agency, but it does a lot. It actually has a lot of control over the future of downtown. And so they've chosen this Baltimore Development Corporation CEO, Colin Tarbert. Mike, can you first of all just tell us a little bit about who he is and what he brings to this new position?
Yeah, so I mean, he's been in economic development for decades, if I understand correctly, and he leading the Baltimore Economic Development Corporation. You're talking about a city that has had its own downtown resurgence in recent years. A lot of investments gone into that particular community. So I definitely think the Downtown Investment Authority was looking for somebody with some outside perspective, some outside expertise. One of the issues that downtown has been facing, according to a lot of leaders, is that we're like out of town developers, people that are bringing in investment. There aren't enough of them that are outside of the region. They're really looking to expand the level of interest, and they're hoping that a CEO that has that experience in other markets can bring that here.
Yeah, he seemed. I mean, just looking at the qualifications of the other two candidates, he really did seem kind of far and away, kind of more capable of this position. I mean, one of them was head of economic development in Frederick County, Maryland. The other was a kind of chief economic development officer in Waco for like 6 months or something. But Tarbert really seemed to come with a lot more effort, redeveloping Lexington Market. He worked with the mayor's office. He seemed to have a lot more experience that's relevant to this job.
Absolutely. And Baltimore, when you look at the communities that the other two candidates came from, Baltimore is a larger city. In a major metropolitan area, not too far from Washington, D.C., and Jacksonville has experienced a lot of so much growth in the last several years, over 1 million people now, and they really need somebody with that level of experience in a community that's that large. So I think that's why the DIA board went that route.
Jim, this he follows Lori Boyer, who's been there for 6 years. Her retirement kind of triggered a closer look at this agency and how they were operating. And while this interview process was happening, there was also this very kind of interesting conversation that was happening in the city council or in the run up to his hiring about who should control the hiring, who should control the firing. The city council made a really strong bid to kind of take over.
To take it over,
Yeah.
and they didn't succeed in that. That's been something they've been discussing for years. There's always been that clash with DIA and what was happening. I did have one question for Mike that I didn't know on this. The gentleman from Baltimore, why did he leave?
I actually do not know that. I wish I could answer that question for you, Jim.
Sure.
I mean, it's interesting because I guess he announced he was leaving before this interview process started, and he said to Baltimore that he was leaving in June. And so,
Right.
I mean, unless there was some sort of conversations happening prior to, but he had already announced to them that he was going to be gone in June, and that was certainly before we ever heard any mention of his name.
The surgeons and the growth in Baltimore, and I always think that somebody would want to stay and
ride it out.
continue that
Yeah.
work. But of course, Jacksonville is going to be interesting. The development that's going on. But Ann, as you were getting into, there has always been that clash. Lloyd Boyer always ran into that, and council kind of said, "Well, we want to control this." And Randy, while you were on council, that was also an issue at the time. What?
It was. There were some frustrations there. It seems like things took longer than they should have. They got a lot of red tape unnecessarily. I do think there needs to be changes to the DIA, and I'm hopeful that this new person will be part of that.
What would you like to see?
Impact.
What do you think would help?
It just takes too long. When it takes too long, I was part of the JEDC. What was it? The Jacksonville Economic. Yeah, and they got rid of that because it took too long. And I feel like we're kind of back to that with the DIA.
There was a DDA before that, wasn't
Right.
there?
Downtown Development Authority.
I mean, time is not your friend. I mean, when a company is trying to decide, are they going to develop here? I cannot tell you how many companies we lost to. I mean, look, we were in an economic boom. There should have been cranes up in the air all over downtown, and they were in Tampa and Miami.
When
and
is
other
this that
cities.
you're referencing? What years?
When I was on council. So what was that? 2018. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. 20 whatever it was. But anyway, it was Lenny Curry's last term, and it was a strong economic time, and it took too long. Okay, another one, the Laura Street Trio.
That's
Yeah.
Let's just talk about that. I mean, we knew that could not get done. The person that was behind that deal did not have the capability to do the job. We'd already seen it already with the Barnett.
the Barnett
building,
Tower,
the
right?
Barnett
yeah.
Tower, and he was in default for years. Why did that take so long to get that resolved? That should have been resolved years ago.
Well, I mean, and it was the Laura Street Trio and the inaction or the lack of movement on it that kind of pushed this latest conversation about. I mean, it was a special committee on downtown was created. That was the committee that generated this legislation that proposed taking over DIA hiring and firing. And they ultimately did not go with that, but they had other proposals that they came forward with that are supposed to help change the DIA, how quickly it works. And that all grew out of frustration over the lack of movement on the Laura Street Trio, right? So, I mean, I do want to talk about that because these changes to DIA were proposed as an emergency by Council President Kevin Carrico, who led that committee. What other changes are going to happen, Mike?
So one of the things they're going to be doing is they're going to actually reduce the amount of direct incentives that the DIA can actually can award without council approval.
And why? How does that help?
So it's kind of convoluted. So right now it lumps all the different types of incentives together. So it's like capped at 18. It was capped at 18 million previously. Now it's going down to 10 million. So but they're taking the tax rebates out of that. So when you take the tax rebate out, which typically is a very, very high number, the argument is they'll be able to actually approve more incentive deals because a lot of that will be direct grants, forgivable loans, those kind of things that the DIA can actually fund themselves out of their what's called a TIF district. It's basically a tax district that's created for downtown where all of the property tax money goes. That's generated in that area can be used for economic development. So they're going to have more control over that.
And they are going to keep control over the hiring and firing.
They are. They're going to keep control over the hiring and firing. And the other thing it does too is it actually the DIA will no longer have to go to the mayor's budget review committee, which is kind of I guess you call it the mayor's cabinet. I guess it'd probably be one of the easiest ways to describe it, before they file legislation. So they'll be able to draft and approve the deal at the DIA, and then they can go straight to city council. Kevin Carrico's argument was that extra process adds like 6 weeks. So that'll help us, that'll help them reduce the amount of time that's needed to do a deal.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
so it does allow this direct conduit, and there is a lot of to Randy's point. I mean, there's a lot of urgency for people who are trying to get projects approved, and that sense of inertia can be enormously frustrating.
Oh, I'm sure, and it kind of comes to like a ground stop almost for these developers and investors. So I'm sure this is great news. They're excited for this, and hopefully it does translate within the next year.
Do you think that being able to go right to council, Randy, is going to make a measurable difference as opposed to having for a developer to have to go through the mayor's budget review committee?
I do. I think it shaves, like Mike said, 6 weeks off the process, and 6 weeks can make a big difference.
Yeah.
So, yes, I do.
If you're just joining us, we are talking about the top stories of the week, and you're welcome to join our conversation. You can give us a call at 904-549-2937. You can email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org, or you can reach out on social media. You can connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, or X at FCC On Air. So another big development downtown this week was a big development downtown. There's this land swap that was approved. Basically gives a part of the Riverfront Plaza to a developer named Gateway Jacks. Riverfront Plaza, of course, is the former landing site. So part of that going to Gateway Jacks, and in return, Gateway's giving the city a vacant building in La Villa. Jim, this is an issue that grew out of the city's bid to get this University of Florida campus, which is expected to be a big kind of
big push for downtown.
Sure.
A big
a tenant that will
change the face
things.
of what's happening in that area. But a lot of the concern is you're doing this at the former landing site, which that's just gone through so much transition and then nothing. I mean, we have the park that's being built right now. When I drive by there, I look and go, okay, something is happening. And they're actually, I think what people need to know is we're talking about that area surrounding the park, the buildings that are going to go in there. Everything that we've heard about, and Randy, we've talked about this for years and years and years and years, and nothing. But this land swap, in order to get the university here, I guess is necessary. And this is just my opinion on that. I think it could help. It could finally bring something to this area, which shouldn't have been torn down in the first place. But that's just my opinion.
You mean the landing or the villa?
The landing itself.
Okay.
I just think we wasted so much with all of that. But I'm not going to go there.
I mean, it is kind of interesting when the landing was removed. La Villa largely, kind of was removed too, in an effort to redevelop downtown. And so now we're kind of filling in those pieces with UF on one hand and this development on the old landing site.
And it will change the scope of downtown. It will change that. We got the Pearl Street district happening a lot right now too. That's the development in that area just west of downtown, the buildings in Pearl Street there.
Kind of by the courthouse.
Yeah, just all of that. I really do. It's, I think for once is really going to happen. Randy, you probably know better than I do on that, and Mike, you probably do as well, but I'm watching intently to see what takes place.
And the interesting thing is Pearl Street, that's Gateway Jacks too.
Yeah,
Gateway Jacks is they are betting heavily on downtown Jacksonville. I mean, their Pearl Street district is just the first phase of like this huge multi-phase plan they have in downtowns. They call it the North Core.
Yes.
So it's like 1.2 billion, I believe, is how much they say they're going to invest. They also have acquired the former Ambassador Hotel that was partially renovated, and a developer failed to complete that project. So they're pushing really hard, and one of the people that was involved in it too, not to get too into the weeds, but he had already his name's Alex Afakis with JWB. They've already started renovating a lot of historic buildings over there even before Gateway Jacks broke ground. So I mean, those folks are. Right now, they've become major players in downtown development in Jacksonville.
Yeah, suddenly quite.
Well, I mean, Gateway Jacks was put together by some pretty heavy hitters in Jacksonville. To try to get things moving, and so the person.
Tell us who those people are.
Well, I mean, they're all in the real. Well, it's a good group. I mean, Alex Safikas is one of them. There are a lot of them. And thank goodness there are people that care about Jacksonville. And they brought someone. The guy they hired was the guy that had done majority of the work in Tampa. And if you've ever been to Tampa, it's just incredibly impressive. But if you have not driven downtown recently, I urge you to do that because there is a lot going on right now. So the ball is definitely moving. But I'll have to say this. I mean, J.F. Bryant, whose family was the Independent Life insurance company and who built the Independent Life building, was told that the property in front of that building would never be developed.
What building?
The Independent Life building.
Oh, interesting.
So I do,
which is where the landing was,
which is where the landing. Well, you're right. Which is where the landing was, but it wasn't going to be higher.
Gotcha.
It was have a height restriction.
Right.
Interesting.
And so the 17, I think it's going to be 17 stories.
17 stories.
That's a little concerning to me.
I've not heard that before. That's very interesting. I'd be interested to see some more reporting on that.
Yeah.
I do want to shift to the topic of e-bikes, just so that we can get to it. There have been a few really high-profile bike accidents involving children, a 12-year-old in Fruit Cove, a 15-year-old just this week hit by an Amazon delivery truck in Nocatee, a 13-year-old hit Wednesday in World Golf Village. And so there's this conversation about whether we need stricter laws for e-bikes, particularly when it comes to kids. And Riley, this is something that St. Johns County briefly discussed a couple weeks ago and then decided no regulations.
Yes, I think Commissioner cited there's already laws on the books. And there is the state legislature passed a bill. It's still waiting the governor's signature that would put more restrictions on e-bikes.
Or at least allow local governments to implement some.
Yes.
Yeah.
We did get some numbers. One of our reporters, Zach Wilcox, did a story on this yesterday. There were 8 e-bike crashes last year in St. Johns County. There have been 20 so far this year. So This definitely is a growing issue.
This week there was also this kind of crazy incident out of Palm Coast where a kid had been maybe riding his bike quickly, and a woman who saw him started trailing him on a sidewalk and chasing him. She was arrested, but was apparently trying to track him home to tell his parents he was driving too quickly. What's interesting is that there's no, right now there's no mandatory helmet requirements if you're over 16. There's no, one of the things that St. Johns County discussed was, no bikes over 28 miles per hour for kids under 14. But they can really be lethal.
I watch those things everywhere in town, like some older people riding them on sidewalks, and I'm going, what? And it just surprises me. The scooters are one thing, the e-bikes are another thing.
Yeah.
They have are the same rights as bikes or the same rights as motorcycles. I don't know.
Yeah, bikes generally is how they are. We do have an email from Paul. He says e-bikes don't cause retaliation. I think that referencing the Palm Coast woman. E-bike riders may provoke retaliation, but the bike is not to blame. We need to spend time on who is riding these bikes, mainly kids, and what they need to know to be safe operators on the roads and sidewalks. And, this may come up again as an issue. I mean, as we said, this bill before the governor to sign would allow local governments to add some more regulations if they wanted. Although, interestingly, it sort of speaks to the issue of home rule. I mean, one of the things that they're, allowed to do is to consider to offer training about e-bike safety. Well, I mean, you would think that a county or a government could do that anyway without permission from the state, but it is a different time of home rule.
It does remind me of golf carts. You remember when golf carts were unregulated and they were the 3 wheels and people were getting killed regularly on those things? I think we're going to see some more regulations on e-bikes.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you all for being here. Randy DeFoor, Jim Piggott, Mike Mendenhall, Riley Phillips. Appreciate you being here. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ian.
All right, up next, we're talking about a surreal performance taking the stage in St. Johns County.
Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. Highway, hospital, home, work. Where injuries happen can make a difference in the law and the outcome.
More at terrellhoganlaw.com.
The essential role of speech-language therapists on healthcare teams. I'm Dr. Joe Servin. Join me tomorrow at 4 for What's Health Got to Do with It, only in WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville.
On WJCT News 89.9.
On the next Florida Roundup, a crash or correction? Condominium sales are falling fast across the state, and prices are starting to fall. The median price of homes also has fallen a bit. Are you a buyer or seller in this real estate market? Are you seeing more for sale signs up in your neighborhood and getting nervous about the value of your home or condo? Email us radio@thefloridaroundup.org. I'm Tom Hudson. Then join us Friday noon until 1.
Protests grow over President Trump's immigration policies, and Governor Gavin Newsom is speaking out.
Democracy is under assault before our eyes.
Plus, a massive military parade at a very tricky time. Weinstein is guilty again, and the Senate pushes ahead on that big bill. Join us for the Friday News Roundup as we wrap up the most important stories from the week next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. A surreal performance about the dangers of tyranny has taken central stage at the Limelight Theater in St. Augustine. Here to talk about the play Rhinoceros is the cast, Alberto
Piggott.
Gosh darn it, I tried.
It's okay.
Piggott. Alberto Piggott. He's the actor playing Berenger, who's the lead character of the play. Alberto, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Colin James, who's the actor playing Berenger's friend, Jean. Welcome, Colin.
Hey, thank you for having me.
And Nicholas Frost, who's the sound designer and the actor playing the authoritarian character, Mr. Papillon.
Hello, yeah.
You've got the mustache for Mr. Papillon. I
do.
gotta
That's
say.
actually, I think, how I got the part. I think that's partially how I got the part. I showed up with the mustache and like, okay, that's the guy.
That's the guy. So we should say, Alberto, the plot of this play follows the disintegration of a society. And initially, you're kind of a reprobate. You're kind of a drunk. You're a little bit of a maybe less of a kind of altogether guy. But all around you, people start to sort of slide into fascism.
Yes.
Represented by a rhinoceros.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Pretty scary, but it is something that we could probably relate to in our everyday lives in different aspects. And it was a journey.
Yeah. It's an interesting production. Colin, the character that you play is kind of this, upstanding, very organized, very kind of together character. But you're a little bit bossy, and you kind of prove to be like an ideal candidate for this slide into.
Yeah, well, it's funny because my character in the second act is the first one you watch turn into a rhinoceros, and I think it's just for my character alone, it's that mentality of like wanting to be that high status and wanting that power, and I think that's kind of why my character does that,
Yeah, it's sort of about the temptations of conformity, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
And so, I mean, what is it that appeals to you, Nicholas, about, this play at this time?
Well, I think this play is particularly important, not only because of its anti-fascist message, but because it shows people having conversations that are very familiar that you have, whether they're in person or online, with their justifications of why they are, turning to the other side. There's, oh, I can change that from the inside, or I can't leave my friends, or any number of other things. And these things strike so true to this day to me. So, and just hearing that, like, yeah, it's the same thing, and just be aware of it might help.
This is by a famous playwright, Eugène Ionesco. It is kind of a theater of the absurd, which is a different kind of experience for an audience. But the message here, is sort of about people, their vulnerabilities to being seduced by tyranny, Alberto. But it really is also kind of about our individual vulnerabilities, the fact that none of us are immune.
Yes, and that we have to listen to our own selves And sometimes listening to our own selves could be scary, especially when everyone else around you is thinking a different way, but trying to be true to who you are and sticking to your individuality.
Yeah. And why do you think it's a rhinoceros that is the chosen kind of metaphor for somebody who has fallen victim to this ideology or this way of thinking?
You know, a rhinoceros is a beast, and they go at you darting, and sometimes you may not think that they're, well, they're just, who would think that a rhinoceros is.
I mean, that's kind of how the play initially begins, right? It's like, who does believe?
Yeah,
Are they
it's just
actually here?
absurd.
And there's kind of this conversation like, well, they're not real. That's not really happening. And then people start to believe
Yeah.
that it's really happening.
It just kind of leaves you breathless.
So how should the audience prepare for a production like this? I mean, as we said, theater of the absurd is sometimes a challenging, experience for a theater goer. Is there something that people should know or kind of be ready for?
I'll be honest. Out of all the people I've had come see it, I've told them go in blind. Just know, it's theater of the absurd. It's going to be a little weird, but just go in blind and watch it and enjoy it.
Yes, experience it.
Yeah.
And there are people that I've talked to that even after seeing the show, they've thought about it, and which it's a moment for you to reflect, and at the same time try not to take it so seriously.
One thing that's a little bit different about this production is that the first two scenes are very fast paced and can be sometimes hard for people to track. So, on some level, it needs to be important that you're just kind of getting the sense of what's going on, because there is a certain amount of, as with the reaction of what is going on, this is a rhinoceros in complete chaos.
Yeah.
And if you can get through that and still enjoy it, you're definitely going to enjoy the play.
And have fun.
Right.
Yes.
Well, the Rhinoceros runs through June 15th at the Limelight Theater in St. Augustine. Alberto
Peart.
Why can't I do it?
Peart.
Peart. Colin James, Nicholas Frost, thank you all so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Can
Thank
we
you.
mention that you can get free admission if you show up tonight and you use the safe word that we have for production, which is alarm. So if you come to the box office and say, they told me to say alarm, if we have tickets, you can get in free.
Excellent. All right. Well, you heard it here. Get your free tickets. If you missed anything, you can catch our rebroadcast at 8 o'clock tonight, or you can find our entire archive at your favorite podcast.
The North Florida TPO is dedicated to transportation planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, resilient, and connected region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com. Congaree & Pen, dedicated to agriculture and culinary endeavors, offering field-to-fork dining and outdoor experiences on over 300 acres. Sip, dine, explore. Information at congareeandpen.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR